3, 2, 1. Right, how's it going everyone? Welcome back to the Topcast. This is episode 4 of The Greatest Stories Never Told. Today I'm joined by Paul McKeon. Paul is involved with the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission. And before we get into what Paul does, I'm going to get Paul to give you a bit of his background, where he's heading, his goals to bring in the inclusion of Socio Economic Status in the Irish equality legislations. So before we get going, Paul, into the deep end of stuff, if you want to just give us a little bit of a background on who you are, where you're from, and eventually we'll take it to where we're going and what you're up to.
No bother. So like yourself, I was born and reared in the inner city. My family, my mum, dad, my granny and granddad, generations go back in the inner city. Like yourself, Tomo, if you remember, like when we grew up in the inner city, it was quite derelict and there's a lot of poverty. And then kind of as we're growing up, they were starting to build into develop the docklands, building a load of apartments, promising a load of jobs for people in the area. But as we start getting into our 20s, it was like none of us worked there, and they were building gates up, and then on top of a wall, the spikes be going up, and it got fairly segregated. And as we growing up, like you'd be hearing everyone talking about equality and inclusion, and social class was being completely left out of this. And when I was a teenager, I knew this, but I didn't know the wording for it. I was like, why are we never being talked about? And then I played a bit of ball when I was a teenager. I got an opportunity to go over to Scotland. I played in the Scottish Premier League, played for Northern Ireland as well. I was able to qualify.
You played in the national, did you?
Played, for Northern Ireland's underage team. I was able to qualify through me dad's side. And just a little rule where if anyone was born before 1922, so me granny and granddad was born before 1922, you had a choice to pick. Even if you were born in the south, you had a choice to pick between the so being honest with you, I wasn't getting a look in with the Republic team. And a chap by the name of Mal Dottney, he played in the famous 1982 Northern Ireland team that beat Spain, the 1986 World Cup team played Brazil. He spotted me because people think I look like Neil Lennon. My nickname's Lenny.
And they probably think we're Blade related.
That's it. Well, that's it. There's a load of us, Gary Gannon. There's so many red-headed chaps running around the inner city. But
or a dying breed though.
Dying breed eventually, my nickname's Lenny, and it caught his eye. He was doing a training course next to the match that was going on, and after the match, he came over to me and was like, I couldn't help hear your thick Dublin accent, but they were calling you Lenny, and I was like, my nickname's Neil Lennon. And he said to me, do you have any relations from the north? And I was like, on my dad's side, and a few cousins and all living up in Belfast. And he was like, you wouldn't mind being able to get that documents for me? And so I rang my dad, rang my family, was like, you won't believe that they're getting asked for it to play for a friendly for Northern Ireland. So I was getting everything together, got all the stuff done, sent it on, and then within that week then I was over in Birmingham in this place where in the middle of nowhere where the England team, the national England team would always go before they'd have a home match. Was there for training, and then we had a friendly in Switzerland. So just after that, sorry, got a bit carried away.
What age were you there? I
was 16 or 17 and went over to Scotland then, and it was a great experience. But just after that, like 99% of the kids that go over, it wasn't really working out. Like I was in and out playing in the Scottish League, and it's bleak over there. It's not like you're getting paid a fortune. I was thinking about my career. I didn't even complete my leaving cert. So I was thinking about coming back to Ireland. So seeing an opportunity with the Guards, went into the Guards, and then went back, got my education, got a leaving cert. Went to college through the back door, the FETAC, and then through the FETAC I was able to get into actual college because I didn't have the points to be going in. And then from that I worked then in a detention centre for a few years with kids, a lot of disadvantaged kids who are too young to go into a prison. And eventually from that I got an opportunity then to get into the civil service. It was something I was always passionate about, and the area that I applied for in the job in the civil service was all around human rights and equality. So that's just my background, and just as I was growing up, it was like always my surroundings, my background, kind of, it wasn't even like I had a clear direction where I was going, but it was like, this is leading me in this direction all
you
the
felt
time.
like someone was pulling you.
And then just a load of things that went on, like, you know, there's not many people from the inner city that get an education and start moving into these spaces, do you know what I mean? And when I was moving into these, I was always the odd one out, do you know what I mean?
Would you have been apprehensive because of your background, where you came from? Or?
Well, not even that, like, I'd say I go into the guards, right, and I'd be around a lot of people, like, their first impressions of me are, the way I got on great with a load of guards, but some of them, the way they would treat me and, you know, using the word and knacker and all and stuff, and, you know, a bit of suspicion around me, and then even like in bits and job, like trying to apply for jobs and stuff, or kind of remarks, and it's just like, you're always being employed that like your place in society is working as the cleaner or the security guard, do you know, it's like what, you're going above your station. And I got that a lot even off people that who would be all like, oh yeah, no, I don't care about any of that stuff, you know, but once you were moving into their space, you know, it was like, you know, you need to know where you stand in society.
Feel a bit threatened or something.
Yeah, and sometimes it wasn't even done consciously out of a lot of them, sometimes it's done subconsciously, like everyone, we all have our subconscious biases, you know, but as I noticed that, it got me thinking more a lot, and it brought up a lot of stuff going on in the inner city as well. As growing up was like, everyone's going on about equality and all, and people in the inner city, like, if you look at the prison demographic, you look at the unemployment rates, you look at even police brutality that's going on, like, the inner city is where it's all happening. Same with the traveller community, but the traveller community have rights, they have protections, and that's, as I start moving more into this area, was like, people in the inner city don't have any rights. Say if you're discriminated, take a complaint. If you have a community group in the inner city as well, they can't press anything through a rights-based approach. They can't be like, well, you know, you need to be pushing to get more people from Sheriff Street because, you know, they're protected ground or whatever. So that led me kind of into what I'm doing now. For the last few years, I've been really pushing with a lot of other people in the inner city to get this included in the equality legislation. And it's been brilliant because a lot of the time, a lot of these issues are always pushed by big NGOs or big, you know, powerful people, and they have a lot of funding behind them. This doesn't have any funding behind it. It has nothing. It's grassroots. It's people with the lived experience from Sheriff Street, Oliver Bond, Pearse Street, Ringsend, and it's us that's made this go on. With in fairness to the help of a few organisations, small ones, but where it's got to where it's today, it's all been through people actually who's pushed us. So I'm fairly proud of that. Sometimes I do think it would have been great to have all the big organisations behind us, or even middle class society who do push it. You know, the ones that do push it.
Do you think that the organisations like the NGOs, do you think they overlook?
I think they overlook it. I think they never experienced it. Sometimes, even when I was in college studying community and social development, all the stuff we were learning about was very Americanised or in a fairly rights-based approach, and they were leaving out, like, they weren't teaching about all the stuff that went on in the industrial schools, how people from the inner city, like my granddad, my uncle, like everyone has a relation that was put into these schools, and their crime was because they were poor. Do you know, it was seen as you could be fixed, you know, you could be saved, and the only person who could save you was God, not the squalor that you lived in. Do you know what I mean? But I think that's the thing. I think there's an ignorance, and sometimes there's even a level of snobbery, a hierarchy of equality, and it's not, don't get me wrong, it's not being done by the other marginalised groups. You have people in the travelling community, people pushing issues for migrant rights. I think there's a lot of people who get into equality and they almost look at people struggle in the inner city or places like Ballymun or Moyross almost as deserving, or it's not belonging. Oh, that's poverty, but that's it. But they need to think, why are we poor? Why are we generationally poor? And why are we being kept out? Why are we constantly being put into prison? Like, at the prison demographic on Mountjoy, I think the last time they released stats on was 60% were coming from a cluster of streets in the Docklands and in Dublin 8, like around Oliver Bond. Now, what's that saying? Do you know? And it's the same in the States. If you look in the States, the majority of the people that are in prison, that are disproportionately in prison, it's a lot of black people that are in the inner city and poor white people that are in rural America. And they're the ones that are consistently, and that dates back to historic reasons as well. So that's a frustration I have, but in fairness, like, I don't think a lot of these people are doing this out of intent. You know, it's like, oh, let's just push equality and we leave these out. It's education. They've never grown up in the inner city. They've never had to face all the time, oh, let's knock these flats down, let's move these people out, or being stereotyped all the time. And that's the thing I think that goes on. It's a lack of awareness around it. And the trouble with the inner city, similar to even the traveller community, we're not in any positions to push this. And you'll often see even like say even the issue, say even around gender equality, like sometimes you'll see, and it's always been pushed at the most senior level, gender equality going on in the boardroom. But what about the gender equality like of this single lone parent in the inner city who's trying to maintain her job, and our boss is saying, well, you know, you need to work evenings. She's like, I can only work daytime because my kids in creche, and then them losing their job. That's for me, that's issues around gender equality that people should be focusing on. So that getting around it, just going off in a tangent, like they're all things that brought me to that thing. It's like we need to get this in, and the other important thing, once it's in, it makes things more collective with people who are discriminated against, because at the moment what we have is we have all the people who are protected, they're moving along together, they support each other, but then working class communities are excluded. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it will bring that together. It will kind of bring more collective approach.
And there is, I think you said there was 9 grounds that are recognised, and you're trying to bring in
social economic status.
And it's not like these 9 grounds are trying to exclude, like you're saying. It's just like, it's not like the ground you're coming from is like, well, fuck all them. Exactly. We just want to join in. Like,
well, that's it. And there's a load of intersectionality involved in it, like, because like the traveller community, you know, they would face as much class discrimination as work class people, you know, like, so I think that's pushing it. And like what happened was back in 1998 when they brought in this legislation, they brought in and they put 9 grounds in and left social class out, but it was, oh, we will review that. And then they reviewed it in 2004 and they done a report to the Department of Justice, and they were saying, the report was saying it has to be included, but just fell off the face of the earth. The can got kicked down the road. But this has been ongoing and ongoing. Years, like, you know. Yeah, over 20 years, and every time there's an effort to try get it included, it's always met with resistance, suspicion as well. It's almost like this ignorance, and it's a level of snobbery as well. Oh, does this actually exist? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And that's the thing, there's been no other ground that has ever received this level of scrutiny. But the good thing now is that I think it's 20 out of 35 countries in the EU now have all moved to legislate for this, and Ireland's behind the curve on it. So it's getting to a stage where they're eventually going to have to include it, and it's going to be great. People might think, oh, it's just a bit of legislation, but it's so much more than that, because with the legislation that's in now, say an employer, they're obligated to meet whatever is under the equality legislation. Services, they need to be obligated as well. Issues around even getting insurance, people don't realise how much this affects people. If you're getting an insurance quote, where you're from, what neighbourhood you're from, if you're living in local authority housing, your income, that all depends on what you're going to get as a quote. So they're the issues that's going to come up. You have a lot of issues, even like say a few years ago there was a university, and if you are going through the access program is for designated disadvantaged students. If you're going through that, they wanted a Garda fetch you
to get into a
college. So if you were going through the access, it didn't matter if you were studying mechanical engineering, but if you were going through the normal route, say you went to Blackrock College, you went to the institute to get the grinds, and you got 500 points in your leaving, you didn't need to be Garda fed. But if you rocked up to the college and wanted to go through the access program, you need to fill out a Garda fed form. Now what that's saying is people from poor areas are somehow have suspect having a criminal background.
So if I'm going to apply for college and I have to go through that scheme and the access program, and I get Garda vetted, but I've done something in the past that is on a record,
well then
is that I'm not getting in?
You wouldn't get in, but just to be clear, in case people get a bit mixed up, that college that was doing that, they stopped doing it because of the pressure. Gary Gannon, a lot of people like pushed and said like this is completely unacceptable. And the crazy thing about it as well is that generally, say you're going to study social work, social care, anything you're dealing with vulnerable people, Doesn't matter if you're going through access program or the normal stream, you're guard fed, you're dealing with vulnerable people. But this college in particular was guard fed anyone. It wouldn't matter if you were studying something that you don't need. It doesn't matter if you have a criminal background. And that's another thing that gets into social class as well. Poor people generally, like when you're growing up as a kid, you come in contact more with the guards. The guards are more heavy-handed on you. Like even myself, when I was a kid, I got blamed and robbing, of all things, a tent out of a house in Sandymount. And he came to me came to the flats, and they basically arrested me, brought me down, charged me with it. Now, I was fairly, that happened to me just before I turned 18. If that happened to me after I was 18, I wouldn't have a career. I wouldn't be in the civil service either. Now that's the type of stuff that's not happening out in Blackrock, or that's not happening out in middle class areas.
Yeah, and that's what I'll say to you. Like, there's almost like this automatic assumption that because you come from a disadvantaged area, because you come from poverty, or because you have no money, you're automatically involved in crime. Yeah. And there's like, people think there's this correlation between being poor and being involved in crime, and it's not. But I've seen that there's studies out there, Paul. Now, I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that poverty and crime only correlate together when you put these rich, high-rise towers and apartments and these in the middle of a poor area. Yeah. So when you mix poor with rich on the doorstep, that's when it starts to become a bit of an issue.
Well, that's it. Like, I think what it does, like if you're in a poor area, like there is going to be, say, like certain crimes because of your circumstance. But in those issues, like say the Docklands now, we've extreme rich and extreme poor. There isn't really, you don't really have middle class families or anything. It's just fairly, people working in the tech sector, the multinational companies, and it's all gated and walled. That makes things extreme. It's like if you're a kid in the inner city, you're out in education, you're looking at people rocking up in Mercedes, going into these private apartments, Google and Facebook next to you, and you literally have no money, and your identity, your livelihood, you want to make something with your life. That's another thing that happens. Plus also you're seeing all this wealth coming in. But that's the thing, in saying that, people always think like crime is just committed by poor people.
Yeah,
it's not. The thing is, the crime that's committed by poor people, it's heavily enforced, policed. So all like theft, petty crime, or selling drugs and stuff, all this is heavily policed, and it's backed up by resources in the guards to enforce against it. But not saying that's wrong, but then there's as much crime going on in middle and upper class, but it's all
they're
done,
just not going through over the fine.
And the type of crime they would be dealing with, like say dodging a few taxes here, changing the books a bit here, and you know what I mean, fraud, people getting into jobs that they shouldn't be getting into, contracts being awarded to their friends. All this is crime as well. Yeah. But it's not. We don't have a dedicated. It's not
demonised.
And there's no political will to go after that. There's no let's set up to be stamping out all that. So that's the thing I'd stress. There is crime going on, but it's not predominantly just being. Crime is going on across the board.
And like you say, it's almost like what the crime you're mentioning there about like the people who get in, or the backhanders, or the job that this person shouldn't have got, but because he knew someone, he got it. Or it's almost like that's glorified in today's society. Like it's as the hustle or the grind. Yeah. Or they're just out there making paper. Or just, you can't knock someone going after more money or whatever. But this is the exact same thing that these people are doing. They're just doing it a different way.
Well, that's it. That's the thing, and I think what happens then, like you obviously, like if a crime is committed in the inner city, someone, a post office is robbed or whatever, someone is shot over drugs and all. People get into hysteria, the tabloids sell it. They create almost like the Sunday papers is almost like a comic book. They're all given these names and stuff. Like it's literally like reading the Batman and Robin thing. Like they'll have all nicknames and all. But then like there's crime going on across everything. Even when the economy crashed in 2008, like there was a lot of things going on that shouldn't have been. And if you think of someone say robbing a gaff or robbing a post office, the social and economic consequence that has for the whole of society is minuscule compared to people working in positions of power and they bankrupt the country basically. But who's in prison from that? Who's reflecting that's in the prison? demographic now. It's not.
Exactly.
You still have the same people from Sheriff Street, from Shamack Dermy Street, from Oliver Vaughan, Pearse Street, Rings End. They're all in the prison. Traveller County in the prison demographic as well. So that's the thing I'd say, is that people always need to think, like, if people, you know, sometimes working class people say, why is it always in our neighbourhoods that there's crime? It's not, the crime's going on across the board. It's just think where the guards are. There's no department of fraud that's like gigantic, and people in Blackrock are getting their doors kicked in. They don't get their doors kicked in. They get a letter kindly inviting them to the guard station if they do, on the small chance, you know, to where someone in Pearse Street for robbing a tent will get their door kicked in
and potentially ruin their lives. And
and dragged out of their house.
And that's then the domino effect, Paul, as you said. Had you been over 18, and I'm sure it has happened to people who are over 18, who then try to get a job, who can't get a job, so then they say, well, then fuck this, I'll go and I'll sell drugs, or I'll rob more.
Well, that's it, and that's another thing. There's a great organisation, I don't know if you know yet, Lynn Rowan.
I heard of them, yeah.
Lynn Rowan, and then the Irish Penal Reform Trust. It's very similar to the thing I'm pushing, social economic status. It's around convictions and spent convictions. So say you get a conviction when you're 18 or 19, you're pretty much banned from like being able to get back into society. Now they have this thing called spent conviction legislation. It's fairly minuscule. Like you could have 2 minor convictions and you're blocked from it. But what that's saying, and I'm sure everyone would agree, no matter what side you're on or what social class, say you committed a crime when you're 19, right? And you went then to college and you wanted to get back into society. 10 years has gone by, you be blocked. You know, they do a guard offending on you, or you have a criminal record for what? Having a fight outside the chipper when I was 19. That's your life ruined. So what that's saying to you is that we don't want you to come back to society. You are confined to a life of crime. So what that Irish Penal Reform Trust is doing, and Lynn Rowan, they're trying to extend it. That, do you know, say after 5 years you're on the straight and narrow, you can get more crimes waived, or you can go to a parole board and basically make your case, be like, look, I'm involved with the community, you know, I'm of good character, I'm working on this, I went to college. Do you know, they make a decision, this person's highly unlikely to go back into crime, they should deserve it. Obviously there's some stuff like, say, child protection issues, if someone was molesting a child, do you know, people like that need to be still. But you know, as I said, a fight outside the chipper is holding you back then from trying to get back in society. You literally have no choices. It's right, well, you know, that's what's happening to a lot of people in the city. So they're pushing that, and I think this year there will be more development on it. Are they going to extend that? So that will be another thing that will help a lot of people trying to get back into society. Like.
Definitely, because there is a high percentage, and like you said, in the prisons, there's a lot of reoffenders. People get out, they know where to go.
Well, that's it.
You know?
And that's the thing, they come out and they might end up homeless then, because if they were living in a flat, you know, they're put into prison, they lose the flat. Then they're homeless, they come out.
They're getting told like being given freedom, but they'd probably be better off in fucking prison, you know?
Well, that's it, you know, they come out and, you know, queuing up emergency accommodation, trying to get themselves together and all. It's tough going, and then it's like, you know what, like how going through the system trying to get back in is like, fuck this, you know, and they're back involved in crime straight away then, you know. So it is and that's even a more complicated thing, because even the thing with the housing problem, like people from prison coming out, you know, they're not exactly going to be put up on the priority list.
Yeah.
To be put on housing, you know.
I remember being at, I think it was the start of 2019, I went to St. Patrick's Mental Health University, and I remember it was a self-harm conference. But I remember the part that stuck out to me, where they showed up on the projector, there was a map, and it was highlighting different colours, and in red, the dark red, was the disadvantaged areas across Dublin. And I remember seeing my own area, you know, you look straight for, that's where the gaff is, like, you know. But then the next slide came in, and it was the areas of the highest suicide and self-harm in Dublin, and it was almost like you could pick one off it and just drop it onto the other one. It was exactly the same. You know, and so I just remember being taken back like that, and I was thinking, how much, like, so what you're saying that it is, it's subconsciously done where they're being left out, they're being overlooked, these people, and almost like that they're not human in a way. and that it's not a big deal, you know what I mean? Everyone has the same chance in life, but clearly not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Money obviously gives people that extra little bit of a fucking start in life, and people who don't have it, who haven't experienced it, it is hard for them to get going, you know? And
no, definitely, and I suppose it goes back again to the whole thing of othering. So it's almost like, well, if people are dying in their droves, like say in Dublin 1, like you've the highest chance of dying before you're 30. There's no other area in the state where someone has a more chance of dying, not from sickness or anything, like from say suicide or drugs or being killed, you know, stabbed or shot. But that's the thing, society sees all this, and you know, gradually, it's not like someone just gave them a book and told them, use it to basically keep these people more class here, certain areas, if anything happens to them. It's not like that, it's just constant information of the media. They go online, you know, you read a few comments, people get othered. It's like, well, if it happens to them, like, you know, well, he probably was up to no good, you know, you know, or like he committed suicide, he was probably mad on the drugs, and you know, it's probably in debt. To where if it happened, say in a nice leafy, all of this is wrong mental health, but you know, people, a lot of middle class people relate to the person and say, well, that could have been my family. Do you know, I know, do you know, I know one of my best friends, his son took his own life or something. They resonate with him more, and then you know, they're in positions, they have positions in the media. You will see it being talked about in a more sympathetic tone, to where this happens to someone in the inner city. We're not working in the media, we're not talking on the news, we're not talking on the radio. Do you know, it's just another statistic. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, and so I think that's what happens. Like,
I think Twitter is a nasty place for it, you know. And I think, I mean, you see an article be shared, no matter what it is, it's so insensitive, or like it's just straight away. Well, like you said there, he must have been on drugs, he must have been this, he must have been that, and they all have an opinion, they all have an assumption. Yeah, you'll see. Realistically, they don't fucking know anything.
Well, that's it. Twitter is covered.
It's a monster, isn't it?
It can be a cesspit of like the stuff that anytime anything happens in a city, you've the same comments usually. Like if social housing has been provided, or flats have been done up, or a crime is committed, anything, it doesn't matter. Even like when people are doing good, like even I think her name's Kelly Harrington, the boxer.
From Shaman.
Yeah, she was doing great. You know, like scum, knackers, the same stuff being said, and that always. It's always happening, like, but the one thing, like,
you're going to have to question, like, the mental frame of the people who are going out of the way to make them type of comments on.
Well, that's it, and usually the times they're faceless accounts, and stuff. But that's it. Like same with a lot of people in working class areas, they're not on Twitter, they're on Facebook and all. And the thing I find, even when I'm using Facebook, it's great the way the community peerishly shares, you know, you be sharing photos, the historic thing and all. People think just there's all mad stuff going on Facebook, but I find Facebook great the way it's the community on it. To where Twitter is more, you have more intellects on it, or people more interested in social causes,
politics.
But that's it. Like each social media platform has its bads and positives. And then about a year and a half ago, I got told, like a chap I'm good friends with that I worked with, he says you need to get on Twitter, and like everything that you are doing, Paul, everything that's going on in our city, there's no one pushing that. Do you know, I was like, oh, Twitter, what's that? And it's like anytime I hear about Twitter, it's always about like trolls and people going mad and like, you know, witch hunts and stuff. So like, no, you can get on it, you know. And so I got on it there about a year and a half ago, and you know, I started, you know, it wasn't just talking about, say, discrimination in our city, it was to promote all the great that's going on, talking about our culture, you know, talk about the historic stuff. You'd obviously put up photos and stuff.
Going through the flats or whatever.
All the stuff like that and all, and it was great for that. And I suppose in a way, it's allowing me the platform to reach a lot of people. As I said, it wasn't like they were going out of their way to not keep social class excluded from the equality legislation. Do you know?
Just needs to be
a lot of people, like, from so many different walks of life have supported it. Like the amount of support it's had, and it's been great because it's allowed a lot of people, like when I'm like promoting this on Twitter, people in the inner city that I grew up with, the same thing that's happened to them, that's being channeled through that, you know. It's almost similar to issues going on, say, with the traveller community. It's giving them a platform, and I suppose that's one positive aspect, because before Twitter they wouldn't have having that platform, but at the same time it is a place where sometimes you do be scratching your head, like just being like, geez, I need to get off this.
Yeah, because like that's it. Like you could have 100 employees that are supportive and positive, and it just takes that one prick that says something, and for some reason the way we're built as human beings, we're irrational. We latch onto the negativity, and that one negative comment can ruin your fucking day. And I suppose, how do you ever see the?
I think of like with myself, where anytime like I put up things, comments and all on it, once like if it's a troll or if people are just being, they're just they're trying to just put something in there and let everyone then kill each other. I don't even reply to it. They
don't deserve you, and then they don't deserve a reply.
Well, that's it. But sometimes the thing I'd be concerned about sometimes with it is when it's, say, people like the media, where they're deliberately trying to do something like, so they would do it a lot with, say, a crime is committed or someone is killed or anything. They would leave stuff in there to make everyone think it was someone from the inner city who done it. It was this typical person, this stereotype, some chap on the dole is committing crime, is terrorising, everyone is quivering in fear of these people who have some iron fist on the city. Do you know this type of thing?
It's all this, and especially today, the rage is all clickbait.
Yeah.
It's like for clicks to get fucking as many views on their website to generate.
Well, that's it, and that leads into it again. Like,
it's a dangerous game, because it's misinformation. It's like, I think it was Denzel Washington who said it's a real catchy soundbite, but it's if you don't read the news, you're uninformed. If you do read the news, you're misinformed. Yeah. And it's like these journalists, they have an obligation and a responsibility to tell the truth, to be accurate, not bend it. Some of them will justify themselves with, well, I didn't lie. Yeah, but you didn't tell the whole truth.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's it. So I think sometimes it can be dangerous that way. And the thing when I'd be particularly concerned about is when you have people who you'd see it a lot of the time, like say even in the inner city, like me missus and me kids, Brazilian, they don't give a fuck about the Brazilian community. They don't give a fuck about the inner city community, right? They never do be talking about like, you'll have like 8 Brazilian students living in a little squashed little apartment in a room together, do you know? Or people in the inner city living, a family crammed into a flat and all. Or the working conditions or anything. They won't be talking about any of that. But then they will if something happens, say someone's robbed or a Deliveroo cyclist is robbed, then it's like inner city thugs robbed, do you know what I mean? And it's all about, but when do we, like, say even with myself, like I met a group of Brazilian young fellas on Mountjoy Square there a few years ago, became great friends with them, ended up being best man at his wedding. Brilliant stuff going on in the community. I learned Portuguese because of them, never needed to pay a penny to go to a class. So much brilliant stuff going on with the Brazilian community here. Do you know what I mean? But do you think they're going to ever talk about that? And what happens then, people who don't know anything about this, the media always just paint one side. So I'd be talking to a chap from Cork and he'd be like, Jesus, what's it like there in the inner city? Like, is there mad stuff going on? I was like, no, there's not. Like, it's not a war zone, do you know? Like, it's going on like while living in some type of zoo. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
I remember seeing some fella post before on Twitter, and I came off Twitter for the very reasons what I've been talking about. I just feel like my head is better off away from me.
Better off away from me, yeah.
But I seen a fella before, he put up about, it was real, he was trying, like you said, he was trying out there to try get a bite. He was fishing, no Brazilian has any right to live in Ireland or something, has any right to be in Ireland or something like that. Yeah. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he started coming at me with these fucking screenshots of headings in articles of people being brought into the country on student visas and being found with machine guns and stuff like that. But it's such a small percentage.
Yeah, well that's it. That's the thing. Like, it's
cherry picking, you know what I mean?
That's it. Like,
and I'm like, well, what about or if someone, like, and trust me, I fucking hate rapists more than anything else. But I'm like, there's rapists here. There's people with guns here. You know, exactly. It's everywhere.
Well, that's it. Like, you have that a lot where they'll try. It's always trying to say push a stereotype, and well, that's it. Like 99% Brazilian community here, they're over here getting to learn English. The average Brazilian here would stay a few years to go back and to be able to speak English and having your qualifications in Brazil. It's like a gold ticket half the time to get into a fairly good job.
Right,
Do you know, once you speak English, because Brazil, like they would do a lot of business with Europe, a lot of business with China, a lot of business with America. Speaking English is a golden ticket to get yourself into one of those jobs.
Yeah.
So it gets them above the rest when they're applying for jobs and all, like, and they contribute as well. Like, there's a lot of jobs in Ireland where like a lot of precarious work that's not being filled, and it isn't being filled, and while they're over here as students for a year or two, they're working on those jobs. And then even if you look in the tech sector and all, so many skills we don't have, they're working in. So but that's the thing, people aren't going to focus on that. They're going to focus on perhaps like 3 Brazilians brought in machine guns, do you know? And that's the same thing with the inner city, do you know? There's so many people doing good, trying to work, trying to have a business, do you know? You won't hear any of that. You'll just hear, you go to the Sunday papers.
It's the papers and negativity sells, you know. They're not going to put out a fucking decent story, you know.
And that's what I'd say about Twitter sometimes. When that stuff is being pushed, you'll even see the most level-headed person getting caught up in it, and then they're attacking each other. Like, to take a step back and be like, what? Wait.
They read ahead and they're emotionally charged, and then they then lead with their emotional thinking rather than their rational thinking, and they put it out there like something aggressive. They fucking get this, go back to his own country, all this type of stuff, you know, that you see, and then it's like, it's complete bollocks, you know. There's so many fucking immigrants in this country that are doing good, you know what I mean, and they're doing fucking very well, you know what I mean. And then again, there is the few that come in and they probably come in illegally and they do things, and I guess I wouldn't be for that illegal immigration if you're coming in to try to scam or to be involved in any crime or anything like that. Obviously, we don't want that type of thing being brought into the country. Nobody does. But immigration is a good thing for the country when if it's going to mix. What do you think of multiculturals mixing together? You know, what do you?
Yeah, no, I think it's really good. Like I think with the inner city, what's been great just with the Brazilian community coming in, like very friendly, very open, hard working. Like, I got to learn a language before. Like, no one would ever give me a job like when I was a teenager. Like, I was able to get a job over in Brazil as well when I was in college. You know, you get summer holidays, May to September and all. They didn't know anything about my social class. They didn't know anything about my Dwayne accent. They didn't understand any of that. That was completely blind in their decision. You're like, Paul, my dad has this company over there where he's trying to get English language students into Ireland. When you're coming over to Brazil for a few months, when you're off from college, would you work for him and go around? Because, you know, a chap with red hair, promoting that. So I done that there a few years ago. And that's the thing, like, it's great. See it as your opportunities, you know, like, see when you're living around a lot of different cultures and all, like, there's so much to learn, do you know what I mean? There's so much that you're going to be exposed to that you can take from them. Do you know what I mean? And vice versa. So that's the way I'd see it all the time. I wouldn't, you know, I think people need to get away from thinking like, they're going to be coming in and taking this or taking that. Fear-mongering that does go on. So that's it. Like, and I'm hoping now when the pandemic dies down, because I'm part of a lot of Brazilian football supporters clubs. What we want to do is getting a lot of them doing the 5-a-side. I was talking to Gary Gannon, talking to Chris Andrews, that, you know, we get them down and have a few mixed games of football with the local kids and all as well. Because we want to remove that whole thing of, you know, with the inner city kids, you know, sometimes like they're out stealing and all. Lads on bikes going around delivering, it's the last people you want to be picking on, you know, they're just in the same situation as yourself. So I think a great way of solving that would be through football as well. You mix the teams, you know, a few 5-a-side. But people get to know each other.
Definitely big in both cultures, here and Brazil.
Exactly, yeah. And say if, like, you know, say when you're growing up in a city, you never need to worry about being robbed or anything. When people leave their doors open, that it's almost like when you see something, it's like, alright, you know, you won't stop and talk to them, but it'll be the same thing. You want to get, that's what I was thinking when I was talking to Gary Gannon about it. You get to that stage where people, do you know, it's like, I know him, he's sound, leave him, do you know what I mean? So that, I think that'd be a great thing, but that's the thing now with this pandemic, the streets are just derelict, kids can't go to football training, can't do anything. Like.
Big time, and I think it's having a negative effect on other illnesses, and including I think mental health as well, you know, and
Yeah.
it's causing a lot of collateral damage with the lockdowns. But I mean, hopefully that is fucking an end coming soon, you know. And
that's it.
I think with that, what I was going to say to you next was what you mentioned earlier on was the word in particular, which is it's very offensive to the traveller community in particular. It's the word knacker, but I think the word knacker, it doesn't only apply to the traveller community, as you mentioned earlier.
Well, that's it.
You said you are being.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. People get called that word as well disproportionately. It's people in the inner city. Now and again, out in places like Finglas as well, that's the way they're referred to.
Yeah.
It's the same type of words, and it has a historic reason for that, because like people in the inner city, they were seen as that years ago. And what happened as well, after the 60s, 50s to 60s, a lot of travellers, there was a report basically to say to them they need to be assimilated.
Yeah.
The final solution was just to put them to rest into Irish society. Now when they were trying to put travellers into estates and all around Dublin or wherever, it was just pure on like racism. It was like people wouldn't accept them. So it was basically the same the way we were talking there with the inner city. Yeah, people didn't give a fuck about you. It was like, well, do you know where we'll put them? We'll put them into the flats. And back then, that was the whole thing. People just looked at people from the inner city as like mixed with travellers. Do you know, they're Irish but they're dirt. They're the black Irish.
And it's a word that it's said with such disdain. It is such a disrespect.
Well, that's the thing. It's always like.
But it's also used among peers and friends to slag one another. You know
that's
what I mean?
it. And I think if you look even say in the African American community in America, it was the same thing. And perhaps it's a whole thing of say empowering yourself away from it. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Like if someone's calling you scum or someone's calling you a knacker, like you take ownership of it. Do you know what I mean? In a subconscious way, you're even lessening it. Do you know? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Like you'll see it all over the place, and you look on social media. It really peels back the lid that's on a lot of people's thoughts in society. And if you go on, if you see, no matter how positive it is in the inner city or with the traveller community, people just can't help themselves. They just let it rip, and they're saying it left, right, and centre. But just on that, like that's another reason why I think this legislation is going to be very important, because it will put a stop to all of that. And if someone does have proof that's been said about them, or if that stuff is online, at least now people are going to have a mechanism. Community groups or an individual, they can report it. If you think something is like.
But is there not a danger there, Paul, of like, for example, if it's one mate saying to another, you're not bleeding nappy because he ate a bleeding brown sauce in his roll. You know what I mean? It's not the way it's just so fucking fluid. But then someone who's actually trying to.
Yeah, well that's it. Well, I think that the legislation, it wouldn't relate to anything like that. It would be more so in places like unemployment where people's livelihoods are at stake. Say you go for a job, you have the qualifications, and then say a month after it, you know, someone from the job contacts you and says, look, I was part of the interview process and whatever went on, they were joking about you, you know, they were calling you the knacker and stuff. I didn't think it was, and say you had that information, then at the moment you wouldn't be able to do that. And if you went to court, even if they seen that you were discriminated, you can't, to where if that happens on gender, nationality, age, you can take a complaint. So I think what that'll do is it gives people a right in that. So it's more about in serious circumstances, or say someone puts up say someone puts up an advertisement and they're excluding a certain group, or say they're excluding a certain community from a gym. You have the power, or a community group has the power of reporting that. It wouldn't be
there is a lot of it though, Paul, and I know you said a lot of it is subconscious, but there is a lot of it done deliberately too. In certain businesses, and like you said, like trying to get into a nightclub or a restaurant or a gym.
Well that's it, like trying to book a restaurant, a christening. Do you know, you get socially profiled. Like there's a lot of gyms. There's some gyms in the city centre which basically they'll give a discount, student discount, corporate discounts to the multinational companies, but they won't give discounts to the local community who are earning much less than them. So what they do, when you rock up then to join, they go, well, there's one of them, this is the most extreme example though, they have a €500 membership fee, and they only waiver that if you fall into any of the brackets. So if you're a student, say you're a student, corporate discount, and there's some colleges that do it as well, so if you're a former student you get a discount. But why they do all this stuff, it's to attract the type of people they want, you know. They don't want to be seen.
That's almost there as like
it's a filter thing, you know, and it's a marketing thing as well. Like they don't want to be associated.
So someone who's already making minimum wage or unemployed and goes, geez, I really want to turn my life around, I want to get myself into a gym and better myself, and they go and they see this fucking, well, before you even start, here's a fucking fee.
Yeah, well that's it. See,
only price, nearly really
price there. So can you imagine, so it's mad because the most poorest person who goes to join that gym has to pay the most.
Exactly.
And the richest one, say if you work for Google, they are going to waiver the gym fee and they're also going to give you a discount.
But it's similar to what the new budget I think brought in with the taxes on the car. If your car is a certain year, the tax is going up.
Yeah,
so it's like you can't afford to buy a new car, so you have to pay more tax.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have fucking money to begin with, you know what I mean?
Well, that's it. Like they're even systemic issues. Like say you pay like poor people generally, like same with my dad's flat, pay as you go, top up electricity, top up gas, but you actually pay much more for your gas and electricity through them. They even, you ever notice, like if they're off, they're still charging you per day. Right. They charge you a standard price per day. Right. Like
before you even use anything.
That's it. So there's all little things like that as well, or even like say bank accounts. If you've less than $3,000 in your bank, you get charged more fees than someone that has 30 or 40 grand. Do you know? There's even places where
it brings up the saying to the mind is the rich get richer.
But that's it. I'm saying, like say you were to meet and
a lot of people just blow this off as that's just a victimhood mentality, or that's just fucking pull their socks up and like I said, everyone has the same 24 hours of the day. This sort of cliche, but it's not that. Well, it's clear proof there, as you're saying, that if you don't have it, well, then they're still taking more from you.
Well, so that's it.
Which lessens your chance of getting it.
Exactly. Well, I think the thing is like, it's the legislation is there not to make people feel like they're a victim. It's there to empower them.
Yeah.
It's not to say to get yourself to work hard, try to be successful. That legislation, what we're trying to put through, is that when you have a situation where you're discriminated against, or not even just about making a complaint, if they're ever doing actions on equality, like you'll see it a lot, say on the civil service, we want to get more ethnic minorities into the police, we want to get more ethnic minorities into the civil service. That's allowed because it's included in the equality legislation. At the moment, the guards can't be like, we want to get more people from Sherwood Street or Pearse Street into the guards. Do you know what I mean? And that's another thing when they're even recording statistics. Like say they're trying to decipher, right, where's the social issues going on in society. They're recording the statistics on 9 grounds, so they're leaving social class out. I'll give you a prime example of this. Before, they used to release statistics on the prison service by social economic background, so you could tell where they were coming from. Were they coming from Sherwood Street? Were they coming from disadvantaged areas? Now they don't do that anymore. They just release it through the 9 grounds. So you'll get a breakdown from age, gender, nationality. What happens then, if you have anyone that's working on social policy looking at that, they don't even see anything about social class. They don't even know that over 60% of them are coming from the cluster streets in the inner city. So when they set a policy, it's just set to address, say, there might be a certain nationality that's in the prison demographic, there might be a high percentage of travellers. So social class issues keep getting left out. So it's not just a matter of just getting its name in there, it has such a knock-on effect.
Yeah, this is why I respect you, man. This is why I wanted you on, because what you're doing is it's not more than necessary, you know what I mean, and it's going to help a lot of people. And
the thing I'd say about it as well is that, like, you've a lot of working class people like that I've met who have this almost like mentality, and I think it dates back to the whole thing of saying, even the whole thing around mental health, where like when you were like, say even me dad, like he went out like when he was like just past 12 to work, you have a man, like you can't feel sorry for yourself. If anything happens to you, do you know, you just be the strong silent type, do you know? So the thing that happens sometimes in working class communities when you be talking about this, if you're getting discriminated against, sure, fuck them, do you know? Just keep working hard. Look, I'm not gonna cry or I'm not gonna moan about that. But people need to realise that you're only fooling yourself saying that, because like, you know, if you lose out on a job, you work hard and get to the extent, and someone can't look past how you talk, or might think you're less intelligent because of your accent.
Yeah, because
And you lose out on a job that you probably want only a once in a lifetime chance of getting. You've no comeback. And this whole kind of mentality of being like, suck it up.
Yeah, and I can relate with that big time, and I think one of the things I say, and that what that brings to my head is that things with me with confrontation, I'm not good at confrontation with people, and the reason for that is when I grew up in my house in Percy, in Vienna City, if there was a disagreement, there was a fight.
Yeah.
It couldn't just be mutual. It couldn't be calm. It couldn't be respected. It was a fight, and that's all I learned growing up.
Yeah.
So whenever someone disagreed with me or said something against me or rejected me, it was anger that led the way. Then it was complete like fury that just it was just scream, shout, or even swing a fucking dig, you know. And that's something I had to sort of learn with maturity, and still today I try to avoid confrontation because I don't know if I'll lose the bleeding head or if I'll be able to keep my composure and talk myself out of the situation. And one of the things I want to do is to be able to learn to articulate myself better, and I think knowledge is power in any situation like that.
Yeah, well, I think that the same historically dates back to, like, if you look at a lot of inner city communities, they're basically they were considered what we refer to as the Black Irish. Even like within Irish society, you know, the church looked at them that way, Middle Ireland looked at them that way, was that we were completely on the margins doing bits and bobs. And then when they built the docks, we were put into the docks with the liberties as well, like all these type of industrial work, people seen as savages back then. And at that time, like, to address an issue, you know, it was a fight, you know.
Culturally,
and that's a cultural thing, to where things weren't done by the pen, it was done by the sword or your fist, do you know what I mean? And that's the thing, as people, like, in this day and age now, like, all those industries have died up, like, for a lot of working class men and women to get through things. Sometimes there's no harm in, like, being honest with somebody, like, what do you mean by that? Would you stop acting the bollocks, you know? To where if I was in work, and, like, that's a normal way of talking to someone, but if I talk like that to someone work, like, you know, I'd be like horrified. But that, like, I talk to my dad like that every day, and I think
it's boundaries with different people.
But I think sometimes, you said, like, how it can escalate in working class communities. But I think sometimes even the opposite side of that, you know, when working class people are talking like that, and sometimes it's seen as loud or rash, or, do you know what I mean? That's how people chat, you know, and it might be seen as being rude. It isn't rude. That's the way people be talking, and they have a sense of humour about stuff,
and like you said there, the Black Irish, like, it was obviously a very racist time, you know, in this country, and we didn't know better. And I think in the times now of progression, I think what we're talking about here today, and the class and discrimination among social class, I think it's a big issue. I think it's almost like the media in America, I'll refer to, because it's huge over there at the minute, are trying to paint out this sort of, and they're almost igniting this race war. But I think it's in disguise as, I think the race war is just a cover up for what it really is, and what it really is a class war. Yeah. You know, and I think the most basic things like
I think what goes on there, like, there's racism going on.
Oh yeah.
And there's classism going on as well. But I think what people say in positions of power, the media as well, like, if it's just made specifically just an issue of just race and not class, it completely takes away from all the class inequalities going on, and it's just a matter of someone doesn't like someone because of their skin colour. But the whole systemic thing, people aren't liked because of their class, and that even links into racism as well, because it's almost like if you look at in the States, or look at even the Black Irish concept here in Ireland, it was all a whole thing of othering, and that, like, poor whites in America are referred to as inbred. Do you know, it was a whole thing of genetics and othering. It's that rednecks, even that word rednecks comes from people who are working on plantations, working.
They had the
red scarf, or because they basically were born to a crisp. They were, you know, in the past we distinguish a poor white person by basically being smoked. You know? But the thing that's important about that as well is that even the class stuff that's going on there, like, there is a degree of racism in it as well, because and even here was because, do you know, years ago they used to think, like, genetically poor people had a different shaped head, and that's the thing, when they think of people in the inner city, or they think of travellers, it's always these comments where, you know, it's seeped in, you know, they're not right, you know,
Yeah.
they should be, you often hear all the time when you see comments and that, those people shouldn't be allowed to keep making kids.
Yeah.
Do you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
You'll
yeah,
often
yeah.
hear that, and it's the same thing in America as
Well,
well.
this is what I was getting to. Yeah, so it's like in America, in the black community, and it's this the cry out for police brutality, and you've seen what happened with your man George Floyd last year, and the correlation I'm trying to make now in a second is like, people will put the argument back against that was, well, twice as many white people are killed by police than black people every year.
Yeah.
And then it was like, well, the white population in America is like 70%, whereas the black population is only 13%.
Yeah.
So
It's this.
but then it's like, well, even that 13% are committing over 50% of the crime. But I don't believe that's because of the colour of their skin. Again, I believe it's because they're oppressed. But I don't think it's a race thing. I think it's because they're coming from deprived, disadvantaged areas. And I think one of the things that correlates is what I'm going to get to now is the single mother rates in the black community in America is well over 70%. There's no nuclear family. There's no father in the home, and these kids are out on the streets committing these crimes. And I see a lot of that, and I see a lot of that in my own area.
Yeah.
You know, and
Well, it's the same.
because sorry, Paul, because like when I was younger growing up, I was put in a cell once or twice, under 18 and over 18.
Yeah.
Now I was never charged, and I never had a record, thank God. But when I came home, I had the fear in me that my dad's gonna deal with me here.
Yeah.
A lot of kids don't have that. And
Yeah.
they're going out and just committing it again and again and again. There's no one there to teach them values, morals, or principles.
Yeah.
You know, and I think this is a big issue.
I think it's the class thing as well. Like, say in the inner city, like, it has by far the highest statistic of lone parents in the state. And what I think what happens, lone parents are disproportionately poor because, like, can you imagine a single mother? She's trying to work, her boss then is like, well, you need to work evenings. I can't work evenings, I can only work. Well, then you're getting sacked. And the other thing as well, what happens to a lot of lone parents is that, well, you know, if you can't work these times, you can't exactly promote you to being a manager, can we? So all the kind of good trappings that perhaps is able to be possible with a mother and a father in the household, it's very difficult just for, if it's just a single parent.
And even more
that
so,
leads into a cycle then of crime because the kid isn't being financially looked after as much.
And then he sees his ma crying, he sees his ma struggling, he's hungry, he needs it, it's complete desperation then, and then what's the quickest way I can get money now? How can I make my ma cheer up? How can I,
exactly.
you know,
that's
and
it.
this is the correlation I see, and this is because I see a lot of that in Black America, and it's being referred to as they're like that because of race, but I believe it's culture. And I think it's not by any choice of their own, but I believe it's very similar to what you see in inner city Dublin.
Yeah, well, that's it. I think there's a lot, not just like race going on, there's loads of intersection things going on, like class,
many factors,
poverty, segregation, you know, and that's the same thing, like in, as you said, like in the inner city, that's going on as well. And what I think what goes on, I think when people just, and you'll find it a lot, like you'll find a lot of people who just want to make it just about one specific issue. Yeah. That's the distract with all the other things bubbling under the surface as well. Yeah. But what I would say just about, say, even like poor whites, poor Mexicans, whatever, in the States, is that when the whole thing, say, if the Black Lives Matter thing is going on, instead of just being like, well, that's happening to us as well, and then trying to discredit their movement, saying we should be standing up for ourselves as well, being like, we're against police brutality in poor areas or against the Mexican community. And I think what's happening is that they get pissed off because everyone is supporting that cause, rather than being like, we support you, let's stop them at us as well. Do you know what I mean? So
I think the movement itself has its flaws in that sense, because it should bring all minorities together as a whole. You know,
well, that's it. That's it. Like, if that's the thing. Like, and what happens then? They get played off each other. So
exactly by the media,
to where, like, can you imagine the fear of God that would be in like higher class America if all the classes were getting together? So that's the thing. What happens? You'll see the Mexican community, poor Mexican community, or poor whites in America, and they're feeling excluded from their rights. They're feeling like this has happened to me as well. But what's happening is that they're taking it out saying the Black Lives Matter, but the Black Lives Matter doesn't want to listen to them either, and then they're all fighting. So it's like you've all the poor people here fighting about being recognised, and then the rich person's just like, well, we only support one of them, and the other poor people use are the cause of this. Do you know what I mean? So hopefully that stuff changes. Do you know, like sometimes it seems like it's going to change and it goes back to square one, and that's the same. And just probably to finish off with that legislation that I want to bring in here, that's another thing that I value about it, because at the moment in the inner city there's a perception of a hierarchy of equality, that certain discrimination is stamped out. It's not tolerated to where others are, and that's creating tension, because in the inner city people feel like no one's fighting in our corner, no one's, to where what this will do, it'll put us on the same. We shouldn't be, our discrimination we face shouldn't be any different than someone being discriminated on religion or age, ethnicity, or whether they're gay or they're straight. So that's the thing, it will bring that together, and when all these groups are pushing things, we're going to be included as well. So I think that's going to be one good aspect of it that will get rid of, and hopefully, because in the States and all, they have the same issue. You have 9 grounds and you don't have anything for social class. So I think this is going to be something.
I think it's going to be a game changer. I think it's a big
because
thing.
What it will allow then, say like in the inner city, if you have a lot of travellers, a lot of people working class in the inner city, and a lot of their stuff is fairly mixed, the same discrimination that they're facing, to where at the moment just the travellers could take a rights-based approach to address it, to where the inner city people that they're living in the same flats with, like they can't even though they might be getting, they'll get refused from a pub, the traveller gets refused from a pub, only one can take it, to where if a case happens where that happens to both of them, they can be taking that together, So hopefully that be just one aspect of it, and hopefully this year now it seems like it has the support. It seems like we've got to the stage now where everyone in society is standing up for it. And it'll be a good day,
Yeah, well look, you have much support all the way, Paul, and it's I think hopefully this will reach a few people as well that who have no idea about it, and who will get on board and back you on that as well, because I think it's definitely something that needs a push, and what you're doing is great, again, as I said, and I appreciate you coming on.
And just to say finally there on it, the bill it's being done by Chris Andrews into the second stage now. Hopefully it's voted into the third stage, and that will be the big stage, so that might be happening in a few months. So when it does, get you some support.
We'll be tuning in. Well, we keep an eye on it, Paul. Look at, where can people find you to keep an eye on Twitter or
on Twitter? I think it's Paul F McKeon, and then the Instagram, I think it's Dub McKeon.
So
proper names,
and
but
you can send people updated there.
We send out updates now and then, and that's it. So
right, that's me.
Nice.